Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. In today's video, I'm going to talk about my game in the Dutch League that I played previous weekend, which was round 4 of the Dutch League. In round 4, we faced Team Vianen and we were not playing home, we were playing the opposite of home. I guess we were guests in Vianen, and since I live in the west side of the Netherlands, and Vianen, the one that is near the border, the German border, we had to travel quite far. So it was a long trip, and I knew that this team is very strong. They have a grandmaster, they have quite a few title players, some 2300 plus rated players, but also some weaker players. But I was going to play on board 2. So I knew that I was going to play most likely a strong opponent. Obviously, anyone can play on any board really, but yeah, I expected to play a high-rated player. And when I saw the starting list, a lot of Germans are in this team playing, and one of them that I did not really want to face was my opponent, because I faced International Master Valentin Bukos, who is a talented player. I have played him actually, I believe it's 10 years ago, actually. 10 years ago, we already played, and he was still better than I was, but I had a good game, and I managed to win that one, I think. But yeah, my opponent has gained a lot of rating, has gained a lot of experience ever since, and he's still higher than me. But yeah, it's really crazy that it's been 10 years that we last played, but I knew that this was going to be a very tough game for me, and yeah, what can I do? I just try my best, knowing that I don't have so much to lose. It makes me feel more comfortable, more relaxed, and I just try to play my best chess. So, without further ado, let's talk about the game. So, my opponents were d4, and here I went for the move d5, knight f3, knight f6, and here my opponent went for the move e3. So I thought this was, I was pretty surprised by this, because most of the times people play c4 here, or if you want to play Catalan, you can play g3, that setup, or you get the bishop out, the London, and playing e3 so early is, it's very possible, obviously, but it felt, yeah, I was a bit surprised by this. It's surprising. So then I started thinking, okay, how do I approach this? And I have been playing a lot of these Slav setups with c6 and g6. So after e3, I thought, well, this is basically the only reason, or like one of the very few moves why this setup is good. If your opponent plays e3 and his bishop is out of that, inside the pawn chain, this pawn chain over here, then it's a good piece, basically decent setup to play. But yeah, now this bishop is here, so that means that I can try to play the same thing that I've been playing, you know. So I played g6, bishop e2, bishop g7, short castle, and here my opponent went for b4, and I thought, oh, I was very surprised by this, because I have experienced b4 against me when I played those lines with c6 and g6, but now I have not played c6 yet, and I just got very confused what is going on, and I had to figure out at the board what to do here. Apparently I'm able to play a5, directly challenge that pawn, and after b5 there is c5, and there has been numerous games played in this position, but I didn't really want this pawn to be so strong on b5. I don't know, I didn't really feel comfortable allowing my opponent to have so much space, so that's why I went for the move bishop g4. So I went for bishop g4 to take on f3 at some point, because my bishop is always, it's always a challenge where to place this bishop. I don't really have a good square for it. Usually we develop it with b6, bishop b7 in these lines against d4, but yeah, I don't really see much prospects there. And yeah, I figured that might as well trade it off for a knight on f3 and develop our piece this way. So knight bd2, my opponent defends the knight, c6, and here my opponent for a4. So here, I know that my opponent is trying to seize the advantage on the queen side, so I try to neutralize it by playing a5. There is a possibility, of course, to play knight bd7, but I didn't really want to allow c4. I thought this was like completely crazy to allow. Apparently computer thinks it's completely fine, but I thought, I don't like that. I don't like to give my opponent connect 4 that easily. I went for a5, my opponent went for c3. Simply defending that pawn because, yeah, if you push the pawn, this is exactly what I want, because now c5 is strong because there's no en passant anymore. And if d takes c5, then this diagonal opens up and I can easily pick up that pawn with knight d7, or maybe the other knight, or knight e4 is perhaps even possible, but not very... Actually, that looks actually really nice, yeah. That looks actually really interesting, but perhaps it's a bit too overcomplicated. But anyway, my opponent didn't go for this, but that was the idea behind a5, and now c3 was played. So after c3, knight bd7 is what I played, knight b3 to attack that pawn on a5. But here I have the move knight e4 because I have this intermediate move that attacks the knight, that attacks the pawn on c3 with the knight. So bishop b2. Defending that pawn, and here I took on b4, c takes b4, and queen c7. I didn't really know how to develop my pieces here because, I mean, obviously I want to play queen c7, but what is the plan here? I need to figure out the plan because there's a weak pawn on a4, but trying to attack that doesn't really make much sense. So knight b6, a5, didn't really feel like it helped so much. And I want to play e5, but you know, if I prepared with rook e8, maybe there's some knight e5 to block that. So I thought, okay, I need to play queen c7, so to make sure knight e5 is not a move, because now that is defended by 3 pieces, that square. And yeah, I want to play e5 at some point. That's the one pawn break I have in this position. Queen c2 is what my opponent played. He is basically pinning my pawn on the c file, so that's why b5 becomes very interesting. I still went for my plan e5, my opponent went for b5, and here I took on d4. E takes d4, and here rook fe8. With the idea, a very surprising idea, it's like something that is very unexpected, knight g5. I mean, you may have seen it, but that was the idea because I am attacking that bishop, basically. And let's say my opponent plays any move. Let's say, I don't know, rook a2. Then knight g5, and suddenly this knight cannot really move. I mean, knight takes g5 is possible, but it doesn't really make much sense if you get to play rook takes e2 or bishop takes e2. And actually, this is already losing that. Well, it's not really losing the pawn on b5, but oh, that's only because of the rook on a2. But okay, the problem is here that I have the pair of bishops, and white's pieces are very bad, basically, and I would love to trade this knight for that bishop, you know? So that's why I'm preparing to move knight to g5, and this way this bishop is also getting stronger, and yeah, it just looks really good for me overall. Of course, my opponent does not want to allow this, so my opponent went for the move h3. So here I have to decide what to do with the bishop. I decided to go for bishop takes f3 because why not? That was the whole idea, and I feel like my knights are really getting strong here because I have control of the e4 square, and soon that c4 square is mine. So that's why bishop takes f3, knight b6. I am heading towards that c4 square. The computer does not like this move actually as much, but I feel like it's pretty nice. But yeah, it's hard to say why it's not so good to play knight b6. I really like this move. I guess knight g5 is also possible to move the bishop and maybe play knight e6 to attack the pawn on d4, but I thought that was too sophisticated. So I played knight b6, a5, knight c4. It's all pretty forced for me, I guess. b6, and here I went for queen f4. So where else do I go? I thought it was a really active square. Maybe I get to play knight g5 soon, and yeah, I have really active pieces. I mean, compare these 3 pieces to white's pieces, I feel like I'm in a really good position. However, apparently the computer believes that after bishop takes e4 here, white is doing much better. I guess it has a lot to do with the fact that these 2 pawns can become really scary. a6 is always a move that you need to keep in mind, and yeah, that's why you don't really have much flexibility here with black. But my opponent went for the move bishop to c1, which allowed me to go back to d6. And now that this bishop is not in a good place, the rooks are disconnected, and I'm heading to b4 and hopefully pick up that pawn on a5. That would be amazing, because as soon as that pawn falls as well on b6, and white's position is falling apart. Bishop takes e4 is played now, rook takes e4, queen d3. And here I just go for queen b4. And I feel like I'm in a good position, but it's really hard to see how I can actually seize the advantage because I'm attacking that pawn on a5, but it's not so easy to capture it because There's a pin on the a file, bishop d2 is around the corner. There are some ideas here for white, maybe knight c5, so I have to be careful here. My opponent went for queen g3, and here I thought, okay, I don't really have so much to do here, as in, I feel like there should be something here that I win immediately, I win material, I win a pawn, or I'm able to attack my opponent, but I can't really quite see it. It feels like there's something, but during the game I could not figure it out, and it turns out that that was the right judgment, that there is actually nothing that I can do right away. One of the best things I can do is try to improve my pieces. I play rook ae8 because why not strengthen the position of my rooks here on the e-file? Maybe I get to play rook e1. That was at least what I was trying to do, so that I can get rid of the rooks and then I can capture the pawn on a5 and so on. And at the same time, if you look closer to white's position, it's actually really hard to make a move here with the white pieces because all of the pieces are pretty much stuck. The knight has to stay on b3 to defend the pawn on d4, and the queen has to stay on g3 because the knight needs protection as well. And the bishop doesn't really have many squares. And the rooks also are pretty useless over here. So all these pieces are quite stuck. One of the best moves you can think of here is, king h2. It's not the best move by engine, but I would say based on this evaluation, king h2 comes to mind as one of the best moves, because what else do you have if you cannot move any of these pieces? However, my opponent found the move bishop f4, which is very logical to develop if the bishop cannot really go anywhere else. I mean, bishop g5 is followed by h6 and the bishop has to go back, and there's not really any other square for the bishop. So bishop f4 makes a lot of sense. And here I started thinking, obviously, as soon as I see bishop f4, I already saw this before my opponent played it, but I was thinking maybe it doesn't really do much, right? And also it is hanging the tactic rook takes f4 because the queen is overloaded. After queen takes f4, queen takes b3, and what's going on? I have two pieces for the rook, and initially you may be thinking, this is winning for black because we're up material. Two minor pieces are much better than a rook. But the problem is that my opponent has moved a6, and suddenly things are very unclear. I would have to take on a6, and after rook fb1, I have to cover it with knight b2, and when I see knight b2, I think I'm just losing a piece, right? Because that there's no way I'm holding this. But apparently after rook takes a6, it is zeros. It's completely drawn. So this is completely crazy. There's some repetition with this. Yeah. So that is completely crazy, and during the game, I was not really feeling confident about this line because I see a6 and I think this is trouble. This is really asking for trouble, and the rooks are getting really active, and I thought, I don't really have to do this because, once again, look at my position. Look at the pieces that I have. All of the pieces are in the right squares, and I just need to continue making normal, healthy looking moves because I don't really have to do anything because my opponent needs to figure out what to play. It's not easy to find a move for white once again. So I remember I was around 10 minutes here, and I spent almost all my time to try to figure out what to do. And in the end, I went for this silly looking move h6. It's very typical that when you're spending a lot of time that you end up making a move such as h6 or a6 or with white a3 or h3 that doesn't really do much, but you don't really have a better move or something. You cannot really think of any better move. But I had some thought behind this move that I want to play king h7. I was calculating down the line that if this pawn gets to a7 and there's some queen b8 check or something, that at least my king is out of there. My king can run and maybe it can save me something there. Or maybe I get to play g5 to attack the bishop. And I was seeing some ideas with g5. And you know how much I like to move g5. So yeah, I was really happy to play h6 as I didn't really see any other good looking move. Obviously, you may be inclined to believe that, I see free pawn, why do we not take this? Well, it is simply positionally really bad to play this because after knight takes d4, rook takes d4, these pieces, they seem really strong, but look at that bishop and look at my weak dark squares here. Something feels wrong, especially after rook fb1, a6 is running. I mean, Black's position here is falling apart. We really need that dark squared bishop to try to hold on here. We cannot just give it away, even if we win a pawn, because we're not able to do much yet with that extra pawn, because our position may fall apart very soon. So because of these pawns, if this pawns were like on the second rank, it would be a completely different story. Okay, maybe not so much, but you would have to think twice before taking such a pawn, where you have this really strong bishop that you really don't want to lose, basically. So I went for h6, and my opponent went for king h2, and this was actually quite a big mistake. Obviously during the game I had no idea, but here I have 1 minute on the clock. I have no idea what to do, because my whole idea was to play rook e1 at some point, or g5, but I'm like looking for something, and it feels like this is the moment that I have to strike. For some reason, I see the king and queen on one diagonal, and I'm like, I want to put my bishop there somehow, one way or the other. And that's when I decided I need to take on f4. And it turns out that this is the moment where rook takes f4 is actually really strong. And it's really difficult to understand why now. Like, what is the difference? I'll show you. Queen takes f4, queen takes b3, rook fe1. I was surprised by this move, actually. Oh, not a6, this move. I was surprised by this move, actually, because I was expecting rook b1. But here we are both, like, around 1 minute on the clock, or my opponent has, like, 2 or 3 minutes or something. And I'm like, wait, I did not expect this move. Like, am I supposed to take this? But if I take, and then rook takes, and rook e8 is incoming, there's queen d6, there's a6 still around the corner. It doesn't feel safe at all. So I was not really in the mood for that. But I thought, okay, what about rook f8? Because I don't want to allow rook e7 either so easily, because f7 is weak, right? So I thought rook f8, I have to play it safe. And here, my opponent went for the move a6 to obviously try to create a passed pawn. And let's say after b takes a6, there's rook b1, and things are not that clear. Things are absolutely not that clear. This pawn is really dangerous, and this queen here is really well placed. And yeah, what happened next, everyone, is completely crazy. So in this position, I understood that, wait, okay, once again, I have no time, but I understood something, that this queen on f4 is really well placed. And basically the idea of white is to play a7 and queen b8, right? Because then promotion and white is winning. So I have to take. But what is also really annoying about this queen is that it covers b8, so b7, b8, it supports all of these pawn pushes, basically. And then I realized that, wait, this queen is defending the pawn on d4. This queen is looking on this diagonal towards the square b8. It's really important. Why do I not just play g5? That was the whole idea also, right? A few moves ago. So I played a move g5. And here my opponent was, I think, around like 1 minute on the clock or something. And he was spending some time. And if you look at a position, it's really hard to actually find a good move for white here, because you don't want to move the queen. If you could like pass a move, as in you could play a move and make sure that your queen does not get captured without having to move the queen, it would be amazing. But the queen has to move here. You don't really have an intermediate move. And either the queen has to leave the diagonal or leave the pawn on d4. And if you, let's say, leave the pawn on d4 by playing queen g3, takes, there's bishop takes d4, the rook on a1 is under attack, I'm taking on b6, and everything simply works out. So, for example, a takes b7, there's bishop takes, rook takes, and after knight takes b6, you cover the square a8, and next you have knight d7, knight b8, and that's it. So that's why it's not so simple to decide where to move the queen. And if you don't keep it on this diagonal, or if you, I don't know, if you, let's say, play queen c7, d4 drops as well, or queen takes b6 is also a problem. If you play queen to g4, then what's the point? You just take on b6, and after a7, there is just rook a8, and there's no more queen b8. Apparently, you still have to be careful. There are still some tricks here with queen d7, but yeah, it was definitely still possible to try to challenge me here, right? Like, I still have to make the right moves to win here. Apparently, knight a5 is the move here, because on the next turn, you just take on a7, and that's it. It's over. So what happened, guys? After g5, my opponent was taking his time, and I was looking at the clock like, what's going on? Because after move 40, we get 30 minutes out of turn clock, and every single move we are getting 30 seconds extra, right? So that way, we don't have to like play that quickly. We have some time. But we're now move 28. My opponent has to make the 29th move, and my opponent ran out of time. I was shocked. I was stunned because, I mean, I'm looking at a position like, wait, what? The game is over? Like, both of us, at least me, during the game at this moment, I had a really good feeling about the position, but I didn't know that, you know, like, I was going to win this, like, either so soon or, like, you know, that easily. I thought it was still going to be a challenge. But suddenly the opponent's flag falls, he loses on time, and I won the game. This is the last move. And then the second I look at my score sheet, I'm like, G5 was the last move. I could not believe my eyes. I know that G5 has been very typical in my games, but yeah, this was a crazy coincidence that I win my game after playing G5. Yeah, it was crazy. I was really happy. Obviously, I feel really bad for my opponent, but I felt like I played a really good game. It is not the greatest feeling to win like this because, you know, I feel like the game was just, I don't want to say getting started, but I wanted to prove that I can win this game, you know? But obviously, I'm still really happy about winning this game, even though it ended like this. And yeah, I managed to be an international master this way. So yeah, super happy about that. It's not the highest rated player that I have beaten. It's like a 10-point difference, so really close. But yeah, really happy about this. We're back to 2200, so that made me really happy because I did not expect that after my previous game in the Dutch League. I'm thinking of doing a recap of that game, maybe at some point, maybe not, we'll see. But anyway, I'm going to head out. I hope you enjoyed this game. It was a quite anticlimactic finish, but yeah, the final position, by the way, is like around -3, -4. So I'm completely winning, but I still have to kind of prove it, right? So yeah, really happy about this win. With this win, I'm going with a lot of confidence to my next tournament. I'm playing in El Obregat Chess Open, and super excited to play there, and I'm going to do my best. It starts in a few days, so make sure to stay tuned for the recaps of those that tournament, but also of the streams, because I'll be streaming the tournament. So thanks so much for watching, thanks for the support, and I hope to see you guys in the next video. Bye.